Something about this case feels different now. For months, people have followed every development surrounding Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. They have watched surveillance footage. They have studied timelines. They have discussed digital evidence, witness accounts, and investigative theories. Yet despite all of that attention, one thing remains unchanged. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. No public arrest has been announced. No suspect has been publicly identified. And many of the questions that existed in the earliest days of this investigation remain unanswered today. That reality has led some observers to ask a difficult question. Has this investigation reached a breaking point? Not because investigators have stopped working. There is no evidence to suggest that. Not because people have stopped caring. If anything, public interest remains remarkably strong. The question is whether this case may be approaching the moment where something has to change. A new lead. A new witness. A new strategy. Or perhaps a breakthrough that nobody saw coming. Because investigations can only move forward for so long before they eventually reach a crossroads, and for many people following the Nancy Guthrie case, it feels like that moment may be approaching now. When Nancy Guthrie first disappeared, the response was immediate. Reports indicated that an elderly woman had vanished from her residence under troubling circumstances. There were signs that investigators believed something serious had occurred. Surveillance footage reportedly captured a masked individual near the property. Physical evidence was discussed publicly. National media outlets quickly picked up the story. The case attracted attention not only because of the circumstances, but because of who Nancy was. People across the country suddenly found themselves asking the same question. How could someone disappear from their own home without answers emerging quickly afterward? At the beginning of most major investigations, momentum comes naturally. Search teams are deployed. Tips flood into hotlines. Witnesses are interviewed. Digital records are collected. Every day seems to bring new activity. And in those early stages, the public often assumes that answers are just around the corner. But real investigations rarely unfold according to public expectations. Sometimes evidence points in multiple directions. Sometimes promising leads go nowhere. Sometimes investigators spend weeks or even months eliminating possibilities before discovering the one clue that matters. And that brings us to where this case stands today. More than 100 days have passed. For many observers, that number carries weight. Every passing day creates additional frustration. Families feel it. Investigators feel it. The public feels it. Because people naturally expect progress to be visible. Yet investigations often become quieter as they become more complex. That may sound backwards, but experienced investigators will tell you it happens all the time. In the beginning, information is abundant. As a case develops, information becomes more guarded. Evidence is protected. Witness statements are verified. Digital data is reviewed, investigators begin focusing less on public communication and more on private analysis. Which raises another question. Could the silence surrounding this case actually indicate that investigators are pursuing specific leads behind the scenes? Or does it suggest something else entirely? The truth is that the public simply does not know. And that uncertainty has become one of the defining characteristics of this investigation. Take a moment and think about the surveillance footage that has become so closely associated with this case. For many people, that footage remains the most disturbing element of the entire story. It provided a visual reference point. A face concealed behind a mask. Movement around the residence. Activity that investigators reportedly considered significant. When viewers first saw those images, many believed identification would happen quickly. After all, modern technology has transformed investigations. Security cameras are everywhere. License plate readers exist in many communities. Cell phone data can reconstruct movement patterns. Digital records often create timelines with remarkable precision. Yet despite those tools, this case remains unresolved. That fact alone has fueled countless discussions. What do you think? Would you have expected an arrest by now? Or do you believe investigators may still be assembling evidence before taking action? That question sits at the center of many conversations surrounding this case. And it leads directly into another issue that continues generating attention. The role of digital evidence. Years ago, investigators relied heavily on witness testimony and physical evidence. Today, almost every person creates a digital footprint. Phones record locations. Applications log activity. Vehicles generate data. Smart devices document movement and behavior. Many investigators now describe digital evidence as one of the most powerful tools available in modern criminal investigations. Unlike human memory, digital records do not become emotional. They do not panic. They do not forget. They simply record activity. That does not mean digital evidence is perfect. But it often provides details that witnesses cannot. Which is why many observers believe digital evidence could ultimately play a major role in determining what happened to Nancy Guthrie. The challenge, of course, is that investigators rarely disclose those findings publicly during an active investigation. That can create frustration. People want answers. People want updates. People want reassurance that progress is being made. But investigators sometimes choose silence for a reason. And this is where the idea of a breaking point becomes particularly interesting. Because investigations often experience periods of apparent inactivity right before significant developments occur. History offers many examples. Cases that appeared stalled suddenly changed because a witness came forward. A forensic result returned. A timeline discrepancy emerged. Or an overlooked detail finally connected two pieces of information. Those breakthroughs rarely arrive with advance warning. They happen unexpectedly. And when they do, everything can change very quickly. That possibility continues giving people hope. But investigators are not the only people affected by the passage of time. Families experience investigations differently. For investigators, cases involve evidence. For families, cases involve people. Every day without answers feels personal. Every unanswered question becomes another source of uncertainty. Every holiday, birthday, or family gathering serves as a reminder that someone is missing. That emotional reality is difficult to overstate. And it is one reason why families sometimes seek additional avenues for help. Public awareness campaigns. Private investigators, media appearances. Community events. All of those efforts serve a similar purpose. They keep attention focused on the case. Because attention matters. People notice details when a story remains visible. Witnesses sometimes remember information months later. Someone who previously dismissed a detail may suddenly realize its importance. A photograph. A vehicle. A conversation. A suspicious encounter, any one of those things could become significant. And this is where public involvement becomes important. Not because the public solves cases. But because public awareness often generates information. Many major investigations have benefited from tips provided by ordinary people who noticed something unusual. Investigators understand that. Which is why they continue encouraging anyone with relevant information to come forward. Now let's consider another possibility. What if the investigation has not reached a breaking point at all? What if it has reached a transition point? Those are two very different ideas. A breaking point suggests failure. A transition point suggests change. And many experienced investigators would argue that major cases frequently move through multiple phases. The first phase focuses on immediate response. The second focuses on evidence collection. The third often centers on analysis. After that comes patience. And patience is one of the most difficult parts of any investigation. People want movement. Investigators want certainty. Unfortunately, certainty often takes time. especially in cases involving limited public information. Would that detail stand out to you? The fact that investigators have remained relatively controlled with public disclosures? Some observers interpret that as concerning. Others believe it may indicate that authorities are protecting sensitive information. Both interpretations are possible. And without access to the evidence, neither can be confirmed. What remains clear is that investigators continue emphasizing the importance of tips, evidence, and public cooperation. That message has remained consistent throughout the case. Which tells us something important. The investigation remains active. Questions remain unanswered. And opportunities for new information still exist. As we look ahead, one reality cannot be ignored. Major investigations often change suddenly. Months of silence can be followed by a single announcement. A new witness. A forensic result. A digital discovery. A confession. A mistake made by the wrong person at the wrong time. History shows that breakthroughs. Most importantly, continue keeping Nancy Guthrie and her family in your thoughts. Because behind every headline, every theory, and every investigation is a real person whose loved ones are still waiting for answers. And until those answers arrive, the search for truth continues.